Hello and welcome to Your Employment Matters. I'm Beverly Williams and I'm here to help you navigate your career. This is for anyone who's searching for their dream job or promotion, or perhaps you're just looking to hang on to the job you have. Today's work environments are multi-generational, multi-religious, multinational, multiracial, and multi-gender identity. Add market disruptors like Amazon and Lyft, along with the addition of AI, and it's easy to see why finding and keeping a job is such a challenge. Employment success and even employment survival depend on your ability to adapt. That's why my goal for this 30-minute podcast is to first advocate embracing change and differences, and second, to encourage you to proactively assume responsibility for your career. Get your work week off to a good start by listening to Your Employment Matters every Monday. Find out how to own your career and get the best practices for making your employment matter. Some time ago, I guess you call it channel surfing. I didn't know what I wanted to watch, and I came across a PBS documentary entitled SOAR, S-O-A-R. It was a story, or is, because it is a film. It's a film about two sisters. One, Kiara, is a quadruple amputee, and her sister Uriah was born a few months after Kiara contracted the disease which took her limbs from her. Now, the story was interesting because Kiara is a quadruple amputee, as I said, but she's a dancer, and Uriah is a dancer. They are not only dancers, they're also choreographers. Now, I didn't misspeak. She's a quadruple amputee, and the sisters dance together. Now, as someone who's taken modern dance and ballet, not tap, I didn't go into tap, but I've tried other dance genres and I'm no good at it. Now, I can do social dancing without a problem, but I'm not what you'd call graceful. And to see a disabled person with the grace and the creativity that Kiara had dancing with her sister Uriah was very moving to me. That kind of passion is what people, especially in a highly competitive job market, need to channel when they're looking for employment. Now, one of the people I've met in the last few years put me in mind of soaring professionally, and that's today's guest, Sipiwe Moyo. Is that right?
That was perfect.
It's taken me 2 years.
It takes practice.
I really do hate to get people's names wrong because I feel that's the least you can do.
I know.
But I do make the effort. God knows I make the effort.
That's what makes a difference. There are people who I correct who are not interested in fixing it. And then there's people who really try. And then you can know it. When you have a name like this your whole life in a country that's different from where it came from, you recognize a difference. So I appreciate it.
Well, I remember when your mother told me how to pronounce your name, she said the last part of it, the last syllable was way. So even though it's W-E, I always think of way. Maybe it's because your mother said it. I don't know. I think mothers have, more gravitas. It's like, you got to get it right. I named my child this.
It must be pretty important to her if she named me that. So
absolutely. Well, Sipiwe is someone who knows the value of soaring and how to soar. She was born in Ensley, Alabama. Her parents are both immigrants from Bulawayo, Zimbabwe.
Yeah, Bulawayo, Zimbabwe. There's that W-E that you love so much.
Yeah, okay. Zimbabwe.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I'm getting it. When she was 12 years old, she started attending the Alabama School of Fine Arts, where she developed a love of acting. She studied theater and earned her Bachelor of Fine Arts degree with honors at New York University's Tisch School of Arts in New York City. Sipiwe made her screen debut with a small role as Dembi's mother on the Blacklist, one of my favorite TV shows. And I went back and I found the episode you were in. Very good. Excellent. You didn't last long, but you did a very nice dying scene. Adiola in Orange is the New Black, and Nurse Sipiwe alongside Bradley Cooper and Jake McDormand in Limitless, the film Limitless. Welcome, Sipiwe. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. And thank you so much for having me. It's amazing to have anyone think of you as, soaring when you sometimes feel quite the opposite, especially in the situation we're living in these days. Soaring is not the word I would use to describe what I do on a day-to-day basis. But so thank you.
Well, as I said, these are trying times and we'll get through this. On the other end, we'll rise like the phoenix. I have to believe that. Anything else is just unacceptable.
Yes, I agree.
Tell us how you knew that acting was the career that you wanted to pursue.
Well, I appreciate that question. I was just reading a story with my 4-year-old about catching the moon. So it's about a young lady who wanted to be a baseball player, but all the odds were against her. And I think it's just that feeling you have when you're little of just, wow, like something you can't even believe it exists. And for me, art was that thing. I remember going to the Museum of Art in Birmingham with my mom. I grew up in Alabama, and looking at the artwork on the walls and thinking, wow, I just couldn't believe art was real. And then when I found out that there was artists who made the art, I was really floored. I was like, this is somebody's job. And I just always loved art. And then I remember when I was 5, loving Eddie Murphy. And I think I saw some of his stand-up, which I probably shouldn't have seen at 5. But
I didn't know what you were seeing.
Things happen, when you have older siblings and older cousins. And I just remember I was like, I want to do that. I want to be a stand-up comedian like Eddie Murphy. That's the first time I remember thinking about being a performer. And then over the years, I went to programs and camps, and my sister Zandi, who you've met, went to boarding school around the time when I was 9. She was a few years older, and she wanted to bond, and she found an acting camp in New York. And for some reason, when I was 10 and she was 14 or 15, my parents let us go to this acting camp in Loch Sheldrake, New York, just the two of us. And that's where I was first exposed to theater and plays and how they're put together. They have professionals from New York come upstate and teach all these kind of pretty privileged kids from Westchester and places. And here were these 2 Black girls from Alabama in Loch Sheldrake learning how to do theater. And I was just hooked from then on. That was my thing. I remember I played Mother Superior when I was 10 because I was pretty mature for my age. And no one believed that I was a 10-year-old playing the person in charge of it was like this murder mystery thing happening. And I knew there was something to it. After that, I got this pretty big role for a 10-year-old in this camp. Everyone said I did such a good job. And I you get that feeling. It's a thing you like to do. And then other people say they recognize it's one thing leads to another. And you're like, oh, this is my thing. And, I've gone away from acting and done other things, but it's always, 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 I've come back to it. It's my thing.
Well, being that close to New York during the summer were you able to get into the city to see a Broadway play while you were there in camp?
In Loch Sheldrake is pretty removed, and I remember it being hard to get to. So I don't remember going to New York at that time. I remember going to New York for the first time when I went to middle school at the School of Fine Arts with some friends. And I think I saw Rent, which was really big back then. And it was my first Broadway show, I believe. And it was like that same feeling I had when I was a kid and I went to the museum and I found out art was real. I was like, what? People do that on stage. It's just this electric shock almost. And not just seeing Broadway, but also being in New York. And I think anyone who goes to New York for the first time knows that feeling of standing in Times Square and just feeling that high of being in New York City. Like, I cannot believe this place is real. Like, I want to be a part of it. I mean, it's a whole song, right? That's the song. You want to be a part of it. New York, New York.
New York, New York.
There's no other place like it. And honestly, I still get it. I live in Jersey, right? We live right in I say it's a suburb of New York. Even when I get off the train, after all these years, I get off the train and I still get that feeling. Anything could happen, Today could be the day. Anything could happen.
It's true.
Yeah.
So did you have a plan to go from Alabama to New York?
I always believe that in life, there's little whispers of what's right for you. You might not always hear it early on, but it whispers and it gets louder and louder as you get older. So Looking back, my favorite I always loved television. So before I knew I wanted to be a performer, I just loved TV. Sesame Street, Night Court, Cosby Show. Now I look back and a lot of the shows that I loved were based in New York City. So I think there were always little whispers along the way. And then by the time I got to high school, I ended up going to a more academic, like prep school for high school. And instead of staying at the School of Fine Arts, which I could have, I said, well, you know what? If I still want to do this acting thing, let me try it in college. I'll go to conservatory if I still have that feeling like I want to do it. So in the summers, I would do acting camps. And I went to BU the summer of my junior year at Boston University, and I enjoyed it. They have a great theater program, and I enjoyed the city, but it just wasn't quite a hit for me. And then the summer before my junior year, I went to NYU summer program, and that was just like, oh, the best. I had the best time. I met so many great teachers. I loved the school. I loved the city. We saw so many shows. It was truly the time of my life. And I was like, this is it for me. And it's the only school that I applied to. And I got in early, and that was a wrap.
That's great. Mm-hmm. Well, you didn't hedge your bets. Suppose you hadn't gotten in.
Well, the school I went to, they make sure that you have other things in mind. But I did early, whichever the one is that you can do it early and you have to go.
Oh, yeah.
So I had a list of other things if things hadn't gone well then. But I have had a blessing in my life, which is that for the most part, when I know, and I double down. Yeah. And thank God, so far it has worked out for me. When I know, I know.
No, you're right. Sometimes you just know, all the stars aligned. For me, it's like, okay, it's like some divine intervention is telling me, okay, Beverly, you missed that cue. I'm going to make it crystal clear for you because you're not getting it. Mm-hmm. Look over here. Stay focused. Look over here. This is it. This is it. Sometimes I'm not paying attention always. You know what I mean?
I do.
I have to be redirected. But I end up getting there.
Yeah.
Eventually.
And that's what I mean, those whispers. Another good example of it is my husband. We met several years before we ended up dating and getting together. So that was that whisper, but it wasn't the right time. It was just sort of like a hint. And then we went on with our lives. And about 6 years or so later, we reconnected. And I was like, oh, aha, that's who you were. I missed it that first time.
Now, did you reconnect in Alabama or New York?
Neither. That's another podcast episode for sure. But he was living in Lesotho and I was working and doing a show in Pittsburgh when we reconnected. It was over Facebook, and then we started emailing, and we got to get into that sometime. But
wow.
I do believe that there's certain moments too when things are clearer than other moments. I think this is one of those moments, this quarantine time.
Yes.
Things that are important are crystal clear in your face. Yes. And the things that are not important are just falling away like unnecessary skin. And sometimes I think there's times in our lives where things just come into focus.
No, you're
I need to hear those whispers.
I think I told you I got a book publishing contract. And so I have to write this book by August 1st. Now, that might be difficult for me, but with this pandemic, I can't go anywhere.
You got nothing but time to think and write.
Exactly. That's what I'm doing. And, it's like, to your point, the timing is so perfect. Mm-hmm. The publishing contract is out of the blue. I didn't even go after it. I didn't pursue it. It landed in my lap. And that's really unusual in today's publishing environment. So, I'm going for it. I'm going whole hog.
I think that if you put out that passion, even that little one I had when I was a baby, when you put out your purpose enough, and then a time like this when there's so much need, then the purpose can align with the need so much more clearly. And that's what happened with you and your book deal, and also the environment that we're in where people need the information in your book. It's almost like like a supercharged alignment.
Exactly. And the podcast, people, unfortunately, are going to be out of work. A lot of people who had jobs are not going to have them. Mm-hmm. They're going to be layoffs. They've started already. And if they listen to the podcast, the people that I've interviewed have had interesting journeys and have very creative ways of connecting with people who can help them with work.
Yes.
And they're inspirational. I mean, when if there's a young person or an older person who might want to be an actor and it's always been in the back of their mind, go for it. What you got to lose?
Now's the time. And now is the time to access it. Something that I'm sure we'll talk about later, but it's really important as an actor to always be learning and always be creating and always be honing your skills. And one of the places that obviously why I live in the New York area, because New York City is the epicenter for the best teachers, the best workshops, the best exposure to work that's going to inspire you. But now with everyone being on Zoom, you can take that class because that class is now available no matter where you are. You can get on, see some of these teachers that you could only see in some little rinky-dink room in Midtown. Now you have access to it. And now they have access to seeing your, you go on Amazon. I doubled down and I finally got my self-tape lights and everything in order so that this thing is set up whenever I want to hop downstairs, if these kids will give me a chance, hop downstairs, record an audition. I've always had to do self-tape auditions, but now it's very clear to me the necessity of having a really good setup. And I've got the time to focus on getting that together so that I don't have to go into a tizzy every time I need to do a self-tape audition, trying to figure out how I'm going to set it up. It's set up. It's ready to go. And I think that's what this time is telling us is like, we need to get ready. What do? Do it well. Do it the best you've ever done so that when things get going, you're ready to go.
You're absolutely right. In fact, a friend said yesterday, "Oh, Beverly, I think you're going to be going on the road talking about your podcast and your book." I said, "Oh, it's going to be done virtually." But to your point, Sipiwe, I don't have that set up here. And you're right. I need to do that. Everybody needs to do that. And you know what else you need? You need to take makeup lessons.
So I did the workshop about the self-tape and acting teacher that I really like, did a Zoom class, which I normally can't go to because I have to get a babysitter and an act of Congress in order to get out of my house. And so I could take the workshop. He told me to set up. I ordered everything on Amazon. And then my husband's sister is great at makeup. I said, "Do you want to do a Zoom call with me?" I Zoom called with her in Australia and I learned how she does her makeup. I got a list of all the things that I need to do so I can look beat, as they say, when I need to quickly get my stuff together. I mean, now is the time. And you have so many more resources than you realize. You can go online and pay for it
free.
Or you can think about someone who you maybe admire the way they do it and carve out a little time for a call and see if they wouldn't mind sharing some of their tips and tricks with you. And my sister-in-law did as great a makeup tutorial for me as if I had paid a professional makeup artist,
Oh, that's great.
It's what she loves to do. And I'm thinking of ways to expand it to my kids' education. I have Spanish speaking friends. I have friends who live in other countries who can teach her about, now is the time, I think, for everybody to tap into that creative well, and not let it be suppressed by anxiety, because the fear and anxiety really does suppress creativity quite a bit. But if you can take the time to sit and breathe and see what else is under there, there's so many layers beyond just the fear of the moment. There's an opportunity.
No, you're absolutely right. The wealth of information that's available online, and as I said, much of it free. And to the credit of some corporations, they're making their products and platforms available to people because they're staying home and they know that there's anxiety and there's, trying to find things to do. And even if there's a fee, some of the fees are quite nominal, but maybe more than someone who has lost their job can't afford. But you're absolutely
some examples of those that come to mind of people who are or companies that are making themselves more available.
I did a sexual harassment training, but teachers were saying, no, we're not going into a large group of teachers for any training. That's out. You're going to have to do it another way. So they decided to do it remotely. Myself and another trainer went to central office, and the Board of Education's technical people set us up. And we trained, I think, about 1,000 teachers in 45 minutes.
Wow.
And Google had made their platform, had given the school district access to, I think it was 100,000 people could access the platform so they could do training. They could do a training for students, training for teachers, training for administrative staff. I was really surprised. There are, I think Google and even Apple, I think it was Apple, were working collaboratively to create some platform to make remote learning for public school children more user-friendly. and more accessible. So there have been corporate buy-in and corporations that have stepped forward to help ease this transition through this pandemic. It's not as good as it would be if we had time to plan. But I think, to your point, this is an opportunity to work out the kinks so that it'll be in place. And the next time the school district needs training, they're not going to need 2 attorneys this time, but they won't need 2 people. They'll just have 1 person, and the entire school district will be trained. And it will take the usual amount of time, but everyone will be done at one time. It will cut down on travel cost. It will cut down on time. Teachers can go home and access it remotely from home. They won't have to be on site. So I think it's, unfortunately, for some, it's the wave of the future.
Yeah.
And I really don't have a problem with it.
No, I think that it almost makes you, why didn't we do this more before? It makes so much sense.
You're such a pleasant, your attitude is so positive. I wonder, have you had challenges, professional challenges, as you pursued your craft?
Oh, yes, honey, I have. I've had a lot. Well, I was thinking about this question and I thought, well, my first day of acting school was September 11th.
Really?
And I think about that as my introduction to my professional acting career. I was walking to class and the whole thing unfolded on my walk to class. So first plane goes over my head. I'm walking on Washington Square South. By the time I get to right outside the Tisch building, the second building now has gone up in flames and I'm outside watching it luckily I had friends from my summer program who came to school with me. So I knew some people were watching this all unfold. That's the beginning of this whole thing. And the reason I bring it up is because it was a really important turning point where I had to decide, do I want to be here? Because in those early days in 9/11, no one knew what was going to happen next.
You're right.
Attack. So it could have been that I was in an unsafe place. And is this really what I want to be doing with my life? Because acting is a very unsafe profession. You are more likely to fail at it than to succeed. So I'm like, this is wild. In making that decision to stay and in making that commitment to my education, and I'm doubling down once again, and I decided this is what I want to do. And I think I have to make that commitment. I have to recommit myself to acting pretty much after every audition or every change in my life. I just had another child. After every time I move, getting married and thinking, what is he getting? He's getting an out of work actor mostly. What? And every time I have to recommit myself, I'm that much more sure that it is what I want to do.
But you've gotten work on significant projects.
Yes. When I started working in 2014 on The Blacklist, that was my first TV show. That's a good 9 years into my career. So for every job that I get, I probably didn't get like 100 jobs. So that I have to be really honest about acting. It is a very unusual profession in that you can have all the training, you can have all of the people, and there's no guarantee that if you work hard and do everything. I know so many talented people who do not have work. So that's one thing I wanted to be really honest about acting, is that I have had success in acting because of a few different things. Mainly, the main one being my privileges. And that being that I was privileged enough to have parents who supported me even considering it, being an artist, being an actor, being a performer, and allowing me to go to those camps and to go to school because they foot the bill. So it was a huge privilege for them to even support me by showing up, by allowing me to do it, and also paying for those things. And it wasn't just after college that support needed to continue, because I have not worked more than I have. So it's humbling to have to say that, and it's very vulnerable to have to share that, but I have to be honest. If anyone thinks that this has been any kind of a golden stair, it has not. There's a lot of rejection involved. Oh, so the first one is privileged and the other one is luck. And what I mean by luck is that I was very lucky to be introduced to talent management early on. When I was in college, a friend of mine was leaving his manager, moving, and he wanted to introduce him to new people. They were looking for new people. They came and saw a show that I had written and performed at my college, and they took me on right out of college. I know many people who have gone many years who are very talented who never got any representation. And they have been the people who got me indoors and got me seen by most of the casting directors in New York, and who have always, talked me off ledges and stuff. So that was the other bit of luck. And yes, lucky enough to be cast.
No, but it's more than luck. It's more than luck because it's also relationships.
Relationships are a huge part. So you can be talented and even trained because, there's raw talent. Then you got to figure out how to work it out. You get your tool belt. But in this business, it is all about what people think about when they think of you. So they might think, oh my goodness, Sipiwe. And then they think back to everything they've heard about you, what they saw in the room, the feeling they get of you in the room in those first few seconds, their experience, what other people said in your relationship, in your name is everything. So I make a great effort, and I enjoy people. So it's not a huge effort for me, but I make a great effort that when people think of me, they have a good feeling.
You're a pleasant person. And as a friend of mine would say, you have a nice way about you. Yeah. So I can understand. I can see someone wanting to help you, support you, encourage you because you're pleasant. And you're nice. You're a nice person.
Thank you. Well, it helps that I love people and I love talking to people and learning about them. It helps I was raised by some really kind, nice people, and I was raised in the South. So it's like, in third grade, you get in trouble if you don't hold the door open for people. But I'll give you an example. For instance, Limitless was my second job on TV, and I was hired to be woman in scrubs. So think about everything that went into becoming woman in scrubs. My managers had to pitch me for the audition. The casting director had to call me in. I had to go in the room and convince them that I could say this one line really well and know what I was doing. And then I went in there, and then I'm in the room with the actors. It was just me, Bradley Cooper, and Drake McDormand. So I have that day to be for them, to sell myself as the person in the room doing the job. And I think I say one line. And I was there with them all day, and I had a good time, pleasant experience. And then afterwards, I believe very strongly in the power of thank you cards. And I don't really know where, I know it from just being a Southern person. You said thank you cards whenever anyone does anything. And I wrote a thank you card to anybody I had a positive experience with on that set. This producer, that producer, this producer, the casting director, anyone who I had a good experience with. And I feel it's different than brown nosing because it was all true. I was just telling them things that were true about what I enjoyed about working with them, getting the opportunity, the day. I find their addresses like on IMDb. I sent one producer the thank you card to his lawyer because that's what I could find online. And I do that after everything. And most of the time I don't hear anything back, but it's just, I think you got to pay it forward.
You're right. I think that's a great idea.
So they called me back to do another part. And they said, okay, Bradley Cooper's very busy. We need someone to kind of be his minion or whatever. And he told me the story on set. He's like, what about the woman who played the nurse? She was pretty nice. And she sent me a thank you card. What about her? So it was just around the table. They were sitting, probably throwing ideas around. And they said, oh, this plot thing needs to happen. What about that woman? She was nice. And then they called me back to do it. And they literally named her Sipiwe because I said, oh, her name was cool, Sipiwe. And then that's how I ended up being Nurse Sipiwe, because when they thought about who could do it, they thought, oh, she was nice. She sent a letter to my lawyer. You know what I mean? So
what I call it, Sipiwe? Distinguishing yourself. It's not differentiating yourself. Anybody can be different. You were distinguished because you took the time to send them a personal thank you. It sets you apart from everybody else.
It's really important as an actor to distinguish yourself as someone who cares about people and cares about your work, because unfortunately, the trap that a lot of actors can fall into, because it is such an anxiety-inducing profession, is thinking a lot about themselves. And, okay, what can I get? What can I get? What can I get? And if you think a little bit more about what you're giving, which is a solution to a casting problem, and what you're giving, which is a nice time for the people on set to get their jobs done and making sure that, everything's happening in a timely way because you show up and you're pleasant and you do the work, then it's not so me focused. And that, I think, does distinguish yourself. It's a small shift, but I think that I've learned that over time and also from people that I've worked with and observed. And it's worked for me. And I've also known that, listen, acting is hard. And if you take anything in this society and you take it and apply it to African American women, it's going to be harder. And you will, I don't love that it's true, but it is true, have to work twice as hard to get half as far. David Oyelowo told me that. He's a very, very successful actor who I worked with in a play. And that's something I've always remembered. He's like, you are going to have to work twice as hard to get half as far. So if I have an opportunity, I have to make the most than I could imagine out of that opportunity. So if it's Woman in Scrubs, I have to play the hell out of Woman in Scrubs.
I mean, that's all, for women generally, and especially people of color, we've always had to be so much better than we might otherwise have been because they've had to say, there's no choice. This is the best one here. This is the one to do it. Yeah. And that's just the nature of our journey.
It is.
We have to always bring our A+ game. It's not an A game. It's an A+ game.
Yes. I played Henry V in a show in Miami, and the reviewers couldn't get over the fact that a woman was playing Henry V, especially a Black woman. And they asked the director, why did you hire her? Like, she was literally the best person who came in an audition. And believe me, he did not prefer to cast a Black woman in that role. I mean, obviously he was open to doing it in...
Good for you. Good for you.
Open to doing it in an experimental way, or else he wouldn't have done that. But you do have to distinguish yourself and be pleasant while doing it. And it has helped. But yes, I will once again reiterate, acting is... you just have to stay in the game. And at every turn, there's a new challenge, especially becoming a mom has been a new challenge. And I just got to stay in the game.
Well, given your first child, I think you were up to the challenge for the second one. You've been in training for 4 years. Yes. And then I have to also say the support of my parents, the support of my managers, and now the support of my husband, marrying someone who, he comes from a very different profession, which has been beneficial. Someone has got a steady gig going as a doctor. Doesn't hurt, And I've watched him for years try to understand this really wild profession where most of your job is auditioning. Most of your job is paying to get on the train, to get an outfit, to get in a room. And remember, these lines we worked on for hours and have this really intense moment with strangers in a random room in Midtown and then leave and never hear anything. That's a weird job. Yeah, it is. It is. But if they remember you, if you keep going to audition after audition after audition, and you distinguish yourself in some way, they will remember you.
Yes. And so I have had to reinvent my relationship with what I perceive as success and failure, because if you only feel and experience going into auditions as constant rejection, there's no way you're going to stay in the game. And if you stay in the game, you're going to become bitter with that point of view. I have to view every audition like golfing, that I'm getting closer to the hole. I am making relationships again. I am practicing my craft. I got an opportunity to perform for a little bit today. Yay. And, I got some sunshine while I was in it. It was a nice day, so I have to always look at it that way, or else and then you have to learn to enjoy auditioning.
Yeah.
If you can't enjoy auditioning, it's not going to work. If you hate auditioning, it's not going to work, because that might be the only chance you get to perform for years until you get the next job. And if you hate doing it, it won't work. So there's all these little mind tricks along the way that you've got to learn in order to pursue acting and continue to relearn, because the changes, it's always changing.
But you're getting exposure. You've been exposed. Some of the names you've mentioned are prominent in your profession. I recognize them.
Oh, yeah.
So you've been exposed to people who can, to your point, reach back and say, what about her? What about her? She was nice. She did this. They will remember you.
That is the hope. There's no guarantee. So
remember what I told you. When you get your Oscar, I'm going to be sitting in that front row. your older daughter and me I'm going to be sitting, she's going to be sitting on my lap, or I'm going to be sitting on hers.
That would be awesome, awesome day. But you know what? I have to believe it because I'm not going anywhere. I've committed to this. And when it works, it works. It is great work when you can get it. And another thing that I've been blessed is that aside from just auditioning and performing, I have other aspects of being creative that feed me. And one of them is I do this kind of improvisational theater called playback. And I feel purpose as an actor to do more than just work and get paid, which is nice, but I like to do work that has some kind of social implications that hopefully can move society forward, whether it's, and in my body, if I'm telling a story, I hope that it's furthering the cause for people who look like me. So Orange is the New Black is a huge social commentary. So I feel like that has a purpose. You know, it's always going to be looked at and people are always going to learn about social issues by looking at, you know, the story of incarcerated women. It's a comedy, but there's a lot of realness to it.
It is. There's a lot. There's a lot of realness. You're absolutely right.
And in playback theater, we retell the stories of the audience. So it is where people tell their stories and there's all these different forms. And we bring light to issues of identity, inclusion, diversity, all kinds of marginalized people. The company that I'm in is called Big Apple Playback Theater, and that's our mission. Right now, we are in rehearsal to figure out how to modify the form to fit these Zoom times, because with everything that's happening in the world and country right now, people always need to share their stories and they always need to create community and connect. So I've been really lucky to have these forms, you know, something that recommits me to my purpose in my work, which is to tell stories, and my purpose in my life, which is to undo racism and to undo prejudices in all their forms.
From your mouth to God's ears.
Well, that's what I hope He wants me to be doing. It feels well.
We've run out of time, but what advice is there? Anything, or do you want to give people, or is there something you want to leave our listeners with? Is there some last nugget you want to share?
So much, but I would say it starts with that whisper, the whisper that I just read about in the book with my daughter. That thing that you just can't stop thinking about, and you get so lit up when you do it. Like when I'm on set and the story is right and the people are right and the passion is right and the preparation comes together, it is the most elating feeling. So you've got to pay attention to what that spark is and then figure out how you can use it for a purpose that helps people. I think that really helps you get out of your own head and into the real engine of what's going to drive your passion forward. Is how can I use this thing? And then it doesn't really feel like work. And then you don't have a hard time doing it day and night, because it's a very difficult profession of acting. So if it's not something that you can work really, really hard on, it's not worth doing because it's very difficult. But if you can get it together and align it with your purpose and really work hard, it will be worth it.
Sipiwe, thank you so much for making time to share your perspective with our listeners. Unfortunately, as I said, there are going to be people who are going to need to pay attention to their whisper and move in a direction that will fulfill them as far as employment, their career is concerned. I think there are going to be a lot of opportunities that may not be obvious. We're going to have to look for them. And hopefully there will be a collaborative effort to do that. And I hope that this podcast, the series, including your interview, will help people on that journey. Thank you so much for spending.
Can I share one more thing? It just came to me because I feel like I maybe was a little bit negative about acting. And of course, if there is something else you can do that you love to do, I would say do that. But if not, remember that means that it's what you're meant to be doing and that you are the solution to a problem and you are that person they've been looking for. And I think it's important to keep that in mind. And I think one of the hard things about acting is keeping those two things in mind at the same time. It's really hard. There's not a lot of jobs. Yeah, you got to work really hard, but also I'm needed. So let me show up and show out and have the skin of a rhino and the soul of a butterfly.
Yes.
If you can find that they seem like complete opposites, but if you can hold on to those two things at the same time, you'll have success as an actor.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Thanks for listening to Your Employment Matters with Beverly Williams. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and leave a review. I truly appreciate your support, and that helps other listeners find the podcast. If you have a comment, question, or suggestion, you can reach me at baWilliams@youremploymentmatters.com. My book, Get the Job Done, is available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. Please join me again next week. Until then, remember to embrace change and differences.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.